First things first, this is not what it looks like. The temperature drops 2 degrees, which can only mean one thing. It is officially the start of spooky season. Clearly, I've already gotten a little bit into the spirit of things. But honestly, I think the color red works for me. I mean, how do we feel about the red accents? Do we love them? You clicked on the video, so you'll know that today I'm gonna be talking about my thoughts on the X trilogy and ranking them from worst to best. I was supposed to have this video out last week, but I've been sick back to back. It has not been fun, but I was feeling a little bit better today, and it was now or never, so should go without saying, this video is going to have spoilers. Before we get into it, if you're new here, please make sure to hit the subscribe button. It'll really help the channel out a lot. With that all being said, let's go ahead and get into it. I don't think I've ever seen a horror trilogy come together so quickly the way that this one did. And I heard that there's also supposed to be a novelization of each movie in the trilogies, which I'm really excited to check out. I plan on doing a video after reading all 3 of those, comparing the movies with the books. Really excited to get into that, but today we're gonna be talking about the movies. I also lied, we're actually gonna be ranking them from best to worst. Same thing. Coming in at our top spot, in first place, we have X, which was released on March 18th of 2022, directed by Ty West. This was the film in the trilogy that I feel kind of gave a little refresh to the slasher genre at the time, while also paying homage to the gritty, visceral horror of the 1970s. This film got my attention immediately with its nostalgic aesthetic, reminiscent of classics like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. One thing that I really appreciated was the careful foreshadowing throughout the film, such as the graffiti art of the alligator snipping at a blonde girl on the wall of the studio lot, which hints at Bobby Lynn's death later in the story, or MaXXXine's dad being revealed as the preacher on TV.
I do not deserve!
These little nods are even better on a rewatch, like most Easter eggs are, but getting into more detail about the movie, part of what I loved most about X was its ensemble cast, particularly the dynamic between the girl characters. Mia Goth's performance as MaXXXine is undoubtedly the highlight, but the film cleverly keeps you guessing in a way about which girl might be the final girl. Jenna Ortega as Lorraine was perfectly balanced, not too overpowering, but still memorable, especially considering that she was fresh off her role in Scream that same year. Mother was busy and has stayed busy. Anyways, the chemistry among the characters was rich and felt real, and even though the guy characters were somewhat less developed, Kid Cudi was more comic relief, and RJ was there, kind of sleazy, somehow sleazier than the actual porn director Wayne. I don't know, I'm kind of bummed he died so early on. Either way, they still served their purpose well enough. The deaths also weren't the bloodiest, but they had enough character and build up to each stand out on their own despite the lack of gore. The soundtrack is another great attribute to the film. For example, Brittany Snow's rendition of Landslide by Fleetwood Mac was a really beautiful but kind of haunting moment that served as the calm before the storm. In a way, highlighting the eerie tranquility before all hell breaks loose. Now, this movie isn't perfect by any means, of course. A few flaws that come to mind would be the lack of involvement on MaXXXine's end when it comes to the third act specifically. She's mostly asleep until shit really hits the fan. Just felt like she didn't get enough to do. Another issue is that the movie isn't outright scary, mostly, though it's not too much of an issue for me since the slasher vibes, nostalgia, and cinematography make up for it. Cinematically, X nailed the 70s slasher vibe with its grainy, nostalgic look. But what truly set it apart for me was the way that it blended that aesthetic with modern filmmaking techniques, had minimal jump scares, and relied more on the story itself and character performances to create a sense of dread that kept me personally on edge throughout. And that ending, perfect in my opinion, as MaXXXine rides into the sunset with the calm, almost soothing song playing in the background like she didn't just back over a senior citizen. Real sweet ending. Overall, X wins the top spot for me as it's the perfect blend of beautiful cinematography, well-crafted characters, 70s nostalgia, and a perfectly executed slasher story. Oh, and Mia Goth ate up 2 roles for the price of 1 film. Enough said. Alright, coming in at second place, we have MaXXXine, which came out on July 5th of 2024. So, MaXXXine earns its place as the second best film in the trilogy for me, but it's still not without its flaws. The film takes a different approach, diving into the world of 1980s Hollywood. The neon-lit streets, the gritty, glamorized portrayal of the entertainment industry, and the whodunit twist all contributed to an atmosphere that was both thrilling and unsettling. I was particularly drawn to this movie the most out of the trilogy due to its whodunit approach. It's one of my top favorite subgenres, especially the slasher kind like Scream. One topic that the movie handled really nicely was the inclusion of the Night Stalker. The use of the Night Stalker as a red herring brilliantly captured that time period's fear and paranoia.
Tragically, another victim of the Night Stalker.
Even though he wasn't the main killer, thankfully that would have been in poor taste, his presence added a layer of real-life horror that grounded the film a little more than the others. Mia Goth's evolution as MaXXXine was one of the film's strongest aspects, if not the strongest. Mia Goth's character development felt pretty believable and compelling. The supporting cast, including Elizabeth Debicki as MaXXXine's director, Michelle Monaghan, Kevin Bacon, Lily Collins, and Halsey all delivered standout performances, even if their roles were somewhat limited. The film's kills were also spaced out and executed with a different style than X or Pearl. Somehow even less graphic than X, but still impactful. I will say MaXXXine's friend from the video store getting his neck sliced from the back was a particularly memorable moment from a gore standpoint. Same thing with the scene where MaXXXine blows her dad's head off with a shotgun. These were the moments that were probably the most visceral and bloody out of the entire movie. Although, even if the overall death count felt a bit low for a slasher, it didn't really ruin the film for me. The cinematography for me and MaXXXine was a visual treat, thanks to Ty West. All of his movies throughout the trilogy looked amazing, but I thought that MaXXXine stood out the most. He perfectly captures the glitz and grime of Hollywood with neon-stoked visuals and detailed set pieces. The chase through the various studio sets, including a nod to the Psycho House, was a fantastic homage to like the early days of classic horror. And the overall vibe that I got from the movie in terms of the time period, I appreciated how the film doesn't seem to overly romanticize the 80s while still keeping a fun and flashy vibe, with really nice and colorful visuals that also have contrasting, grimy visuals to go with it. However, the film does get messy, specifically the third act. The unanswered questions combined with the predictability of the killer's identity kept it from reaching the heights of X, for me personally. The ending also felt rushed, and the lack of more victims kind of left me wanting more. I feel like it could have at least tried to connect just a little bit more to X, and especially Pearl, but that's really a small gripe. In the end, despite the film's issues, it's a solid throwback to 80s whodunits and slashers that hits plenty of the right marks to earn it a solid second place in this ranking. Well, this COVID is no joke. Third place at the bottom of our list is Pearl, which came out on September 16th of 2022, a mere 6 months after X came out. Okay, don't get me wrong, Pearl is a fantastic film. It's extremely badass that it not only was released the same year as X, but was also shot back to back with it. Mia Goth is a force, I swear. Despite the impressive production, the movie just didn't stick the landing in the same way for me that X or even MaXXXine did. As someone who gravitates more towards traditional slashers, Pearl's psychological thriller approach, while well executed, didn't quite hit the same notes for me. That said, it's impossible to deny the film's above average quality, particularly in how it expands on the backstory of one of the genre's most intriguing villains. Mia Goth's portrayal of a young Pearl is nothing short of captivating. She brings an unsettling sweetness to the role that slowly unravels into something truly unhinged. Goth's performance is arguably the best in the entire trilogy here, capturing the tragic descent of a woman whose dreams of stardom twist into a deadly obsession. Visually speaking, Pearl is a stunning homage to the Technicolor films of the 1920s and 30s, with its vibrant colors and intricate period details. The film's cinematography captures the haunting beauty of the Texas countryside, paired against the horrifying acts of violence courtesy of Pearl. The homages to The Wizard of Oz, like the visuals of the Scarecrow dance scene, added to the film's nostalgic yet unsettling atmosphere. The movie looks like a very pretty, colorful, old-timey nightmare. I love the appearance of the alligator in this one as like a little nod to X. Well, I think it was a nod. I'm pretty sure that wasn't the same alligator. If it was though, love that for them. Probably the best relationship that she has on screen since she murders everyone else, except for Howard. I just want to know what happened when he walked in on that family dinner at the end of Pearl.
I'm so happy you're home.
Anyways, speaking of that, getting into the deaths for this one, the murders in Pearl are kind of the softest of the trilogy. I guess that's one way of putting it. I mean, still brutal, including an immolation and a dismemberment. They carry a weight that feels more tragic than terrifying. The deaths are graphic and disturbing, but there's a sadness to them that lingers, which is why I consider these deaths a bit softer, but that's just my opinion. I felt more sad and moved versus on edge and tense compared to X or MaXXXine. I don't know, let me know down in the comments below which movie has the most intense deaths in your opinion. I'd love to get some other POVs. Anyways though, the film's slower pace and character study style are what ultimately place it in third. While I loved getting a deeper look into Pearl's psyche and the dreamy, nightmare-like quality that the movie had, the story dragged in parts and the lack of traditional slasher elements left me feeling slightly disconnected. The movie is by no means bad or even close to that. It just felt like there could have been a little bit more story and perhaps a few more characters for Pearl to kill. Could have added to the body count and given us some more of those classic slasher elements we got with X and MaXXXine. but in the end, I don't really think that's the movie that they were going for with this one. That's perfectly fine, just wasn't for me. Despite any of that though, Pearl still stands as a compelling and essential part of the trilogy. It provides important context to Pearl's motivations and sets the stage for the events of X. The disturbing yet colorful and pretty imagery combined with Goth's masterful performance makes it a haunting psychological horror that, while flawed, nicely complements the other films in the series. It may not be my first choice to rewatch, but it's a fascinating, beautifully crafted film that rounds out an overall stellar modern horror trilogy. Alright guys, so that about wraps up this video. I don't know if you can tell, but my voice is just dying. So I'll spare y'all the epilogue. If you liked what you saw, like, share, subscribe. What did you think of the X trilogy? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.